Okay, we've just finished the windows, and now what we're going to do is draw the door on the opposite wall on the right side. Now the door is drawn the same way as the windows, except we're going to have all the angles be the mirror opposite on this wall. Okay, so if you see the inside edge on the left side of the window, you're going to see the inside edge of the doorway on the right side of the door frame. So everything's going to be mirror opposite on the right hand side, which is kind of interesting that that happens. And all a doorway is just, it's the same as a window, except you don't have the bottom piece. And it's just longer. So that's how you should think of it. Nowhere on this doorway should there be a horizontal line. Once again, I stress to you, you're just using vertical lines and vanishing point lines for the door, and that's it. So let's sketch the location of our door. We don't want it to be right on the edge of the paper, and this is the actual this is actually the actual area of our drawing. Anything past these lines are not a part of the actual drawing. So about an inch or so in from the very right hand edge of the paper, I'm going to draw a vertical line to figure out how tall I want the doorway to be. I want there to be a similar amount of space between the doorway and maybe the top of these windows. Or maybe we could make it a little bit less since it is a doorway. We want to make it high enough for most average people to pass through. I'm going to make this, the top of the doorway line look like it's going toward vanishing point 1, because it will go toward vanishing point 1 once we go over that with our ruler. So whether that's the correct angle or not, I'm not sure. I'm just guessing at it, and I'm just doing a little rough drawing. I want the doorway to be wider than the windows, so let's make it wider, the opening. Okay, so that's good right there. Okay. So now I have to kind of figure out, do I want this to represent the outside of my door frame or the inside of just the actual hole or the open part of my doorway? So, I think that I'm going to make that the outside, because I don't want my door to just become humongous. So we want this to look like it is a view of a room, which is pretty large, okay? And we also don't want to look like we're right up against the corner. We want to be able to fit a bed in here. So we'll do that. We'll put a twin size bed or a full size bed in there. So this line here will represent the outside edge of the molding or the frame that goes around the doorway. Remember, the bottom of the doorway doesn't have a frame because it's the floor. It hits the floor. Can't have that there or people would trip over it. So now that I've sketched the general shape of my doorway, figured out if the height looks kind of realistic and the location, how wide the doorway is, it should be wide enough for most people to go through. So that looks pretty good. It should be wider than the window. That's what I'm trying to get at. Now, go over your lines with your so-called good lines now. Draw your verticals. Doesn't matter. You may not know exactly how tall to make your vertical lines. Just make some long ones. You don't know. Okay? That will be determined by this, where those vertical lines will be determined by this vanishing point line. So I'm going to point one end of the ruler at vanishing point 1, and then tilt my ruler up, and oh, I see I was a little off on my vanishing point line. The actual vanishing point line is a little bit straighter and less angled than the one that I drew. Okay, so now let's erase all of the sketch lines so that we don't have all these confusing lines down on our paper. Okay, and what I want you to do now is pretty important. This is where most students have trouble drawing the doorway. I want you to look at the vertical line of the outside of the doorway here, or you could call it the inside of the doorway, it doesn't matter. Look at this line right over here. I want you to extend that line down just a tiny bit past the line for the floor. About how much? Maybe 1/16 of an inch, or maybe that's about it. Not a very large amount. Just maybe a little bit past this line here. And why I'm doing that is because I want, when things, the frame for the doorway, when it is actually nailed to the wall, and nailed around the doorway and onto the wall. And when something is against the wall, the bottom of that object should be a little bit lower than the line for the wall where the wall meets the floor. So the level should be a little bit lower. So that's what I'm getting at. I'm going to use vanishing point 1 and line it up with the bottom of that line and just draw a horizontal line kind of right at the base of the door frame. Okay, it could go all the way across, or it could just be on the sides there, it doesn't matter. And that represents the thickness of the molding itself. And that, because of, if anything has a thickness, it's going to pop out. It's going to pop off the wall. And to show something up against the wall and also popping off the wall, it needs to have a lower line here for its base. Okay? Now we're going to draw a vertical line that's parallel to, we didn't want to make the doorway too big, right? So what we're going to do is draw a smaller rectangle on the inside. So let's draw the molding, and we're going to keep it similar to the molding around our first window, that same type of thickness, because normally it is on the house, unless you're changing up the style or something of the little molding around the window. Now, what is the molding around a window called? Just molding? Trim. I keep calling it molding, but it's really called trim. So let's make this side here a little bit thinner. Why? Because it's further from us, the viewer. But keep the line straight up and down and parallel to the other one, because if you make it crooked right away, you'll see it. And you'll notice that it's crooked. Use a vanishing point line for the bottom of the trim, I should say, trim. Like that. Remember, the line for the trim should go all the way down to that second line. Okay? So you can now erase that line to the left, to the very far left and right. Okay? And you can even erase that line in the middle here. You don't need that. Just, you need that little tiny bit of line right at the end of your trim. Now, to make the doorway look like it's three-dimensional, just like the windows, we are going to do a very, very similar thing. Almost the same thing. We are going to draw a really, really thin parallel vertical line on the side here. We don't know how tall it is, but let's just go past where we need it to be, just in case. And then right at the corner of the trim, the right-hand corner of the trim we just finished, we are going to connect this piece of trim to the edge of the trim. The edge of the trim really should stop right at the wall line. And use a vanishing point 2 line to draw just a tiny little line segment pointing upwards toward vanishing point 2. That would be the angle of that trim. It's kind of at an angle like so, like that. That's this little line right there. You could barely see that. Now you use vanishing point 2 again to connect the top corner to that second vanishing point, to that second parallel line, I'm sorry, that vertical line that's parallel to the edge of the trim. So what you see is now the side edge of that piece of trim. And I'm going to shade it dark so that you can see it better on the camera. Okay, and it also makes it look more three-dimensional if you add some shading, right? Okay, so if we have this outside side edge, you should also see the inside side edge here. But on a doorway, it's usually a pretty thick or pretty wide piece of wood. And it kind of caps off the space between two walls so you don't see all that inside stuff. So let's make a thick line like over here by the window. And make the line stop right at the line for where the wall met the floor. And connect with a vanishing point 2, angled line. And it's going to also be angled upwards like that, right here, this line right here. So I drew this line right at the end. Now this is the inside of that doorway. It's a little piece of wood, I guess you could call it another piece of trim, which is a lot wider than the one on the outside, like this. Now we don't have to draw anything on the bottom, but we do have to draw the bottom side of the top of this trim. When we look up at this trim, we should see like the underside of it. Just like in the 2-point perspective cube drawing, we see like the underside of a cube when it's like floating up in the air. That's the same type of rationale here. So let's just have a very, very thin vanishing point 1 line. So I'm going over here now to vanishing point 1 to just draw a really, really thin piece of that. Okay, and right where it meets this inside trim, I want you to put a little point right there. Connect that point to this other corner, the next corner on the inside of the doorway. And that's not any kind of a vanishing point line, it's just the line that connects those two corners together. And then erase the little vertical line or any other stray marks because you don't need those. And you may put a little bit of shading on the underside there. And I'm going to make it a little bit darker than the side over here. So that's a little bit darker, that's a little bit lighter. So you could see the difference and the change in angle. The shading enhances the fact that there's a change in angle going on right there. All right, so that is how to draw a doorway. Okay, the next thing that we're doing, since we're doing everything that's kind of like on the walls and on the outside of the room, like, or the room itself, we did the windows, now we just finished the doorway. We are going to draw the floors, and I'm going to show you how to draw a wooden floor. It's a little bit difficult because we're not going to have the same kind of little points of references that we could put down, mark off at the bottom to keep each of our strips of wood for the wood flooring like an even space apart. In fact, you don't want them to be an even space apart because as we go toward the corner, we're getting further and further away from the room. I mean, from us, our location. So the floor planks should also get a little bit narrower and narrower and narrower looking. So we're going to have to just use kind of our common sense here. If this paper was a lot bigger and I could actually fit the whole, like the other corner behind me and draw like the whole room, then I could mark off some little tick marks that could help us draw the floor perhaps, but I think that the best way to do this and to keep it simple is just to use our common sense and just use vanishing point 1. You may use vanishing point 2 if you want the floorboards to be coming in this kind of direction. If I wanted the floorboards to going in this direction, I would use vanishing point 1. I'm just going to use vanishing point 1. It doesn't matter which vanishing point on which side you use. But for the floorboards in the foreground, what I want to try to do is to, you know what, they are going to get narrower. I just want to space them apart just a little bit more. Okay, make them look a little bit wider toward the front. And then as I go toward this back corner, try to control my spacing so that it gets a little bit narrower and narrower. Now this is where having a clear ruler is very helpful. So if you could get out to the dollar store, if you're near a dollar store and you could pick up a clear ruler or order one, that would be great. But if you can't, then you're just going to have to deal with any straight edge that you have. But as you can see, with a clear ruler, you can kind of see your previous lines, so you can determine if you need to move the ruler over a little bit to make the space smaller, or if you're making the space too small, and then just to make it just a little bit smaller. Okay, and of course having a longer ruler would be nice, because I keep getting that little bump where I attached the paper. I could just flip it over this way and then I wouldn't have the see-through ruler though. So it's kind of a, there's disadvantages either way. So I'm just going to use this side here. Okay, so my ruler is just pivoting on the vanishing point 1 line. You can make a couple of your lines spaced similarly. You don't have to get smaller with every single line, but eventually the overall effect should be that the lines are getting a little bit spaced a little bit closer together as the floor goes away from you, the viewer. And, you know, is there an unrealistic, I mean, can a floorboard be too wide? No. Now you're very lucky, because flooring, there's just so many products out there that people use and so many variations that you can actually buy extra wide flooring, which is kind of luxurious. If it's made out of real wood, then it's like a bigger solid piece of wood that would be needed for each plank. So I'm sure that that is very, very luxurious and very expensive. So if you want to go for luxe, go for it. Just make sure you're pivoting on vanishing point 1 when you're making that flooring though. Okay, I'm stopping right here because that's the edge of my actual picture. A lot of this flooring you're going to cover up anyway, because we will draw a bed. So some of you might say, oh, why'd you make us go through all that? Well, because I made you go through all that. No, because if you do any other kind of room, you may have a lot more of the floor showing. Like if you did this as a living room or a dining room, you're definitely going to, at that point, have a little bit more floor showing. So I'm going to switch my ruler like this, now that I need to see through the ruler over here. So now that I'm looking at this doorway, I'm kind of thinking, where does that doorway go? We don't know. It could be a bathroom. This could be the doorway into a master bedroom's bathroom, master bath. It could be out into the hallway, so that connects the room to the rest of the house. It could be a closet. So, you know, you can think about what is that room going to be. Okay. Let's see here. if you want it to be a hallway, I'm going to just line, I'm going to draw a line slightly above this line for the side edge of this doorway, just slightly above that, and use vanishing point 2 to draw the side of the doorway. Look at that. Just with that line, now your eyes feel like they could go out that door and into a different space. Okay? And I just drew that because maybe I want this wooden floor to continue out there into that space. So let's go ahead and use our ruler, pivot your ruler on vanishing point 1 and move that floor out into the hallway. Have the hallway there. In other words, have the hallway also have the same type of wooden floor. Okay? And you can make the lines closer, even closer together out there, because that's even farther away. Right? Okay. So definitely, have fun with this as you're drawing. You're kind of creating an imaginary world that maybe looks a little bit more realistic now than maybe in some previous drawings you might have done of spaces, or maybe you never drew rooms or spaces. Now you can use these skills to draw a room or a setting behind your people in your drawings. If you wanted to add a little bit more detail and a little bit more information. Let's say if you were drawing some characters, now you could tell a little bit about their life and kind of like where they live, what kind of things they're interested in their spaces, in their homes. So I see what's going on here. There we go. Just this floor, this line right here seems a little off, so I'm just correcting that. Okay, now we have a floor that goes out into the hallway. We have the side of our hallway, that's what we're facing right over here. We have our windows and we have this wonderful wooden floor. Now let's draw a light up in the ceiling. So the light is going to be, you could put it near the center where you have this little center crease on the paper. You can keep it a little bit close to the top edge of the paper, but not right on the top edge. Maybe go down about 3/4 of an inch and let's draw a cylinder. So the bottom of a cylinder, right? Let's start from the bottom on out. The bottom of a cylinder is an oval, correct? Yes. So let's draw an oval, best we can. The bottom of a cylinder is an oval. And then from the sides, you should draw 2 vertical lines, right? Let's say this light fixture looks like kind of like a cylinder, a really short one, like almost like a dog dish shape, with a upside down dome cap on the bottom of it. That's kind of like the glass portion. So then let's draw a parallel curved line here. So this is what I call the dog dish shape. Okay, so this is the bottom. It's like we're actually building something. This is the bottom of our room lamp. So now let's kind of draw that was the base. I should call it the base. Let's draw the glass portion, which is going to be domed like this. It kind of looks like the top of a muffin, basically, upside down. That is kind of like a rounded triangular shape. Now, this isn't going to be clear because most of those glass lighting fixtures are frosted glass, or it's like a milky white glass. So we shouldn't see the other edge through the glass, because it's usually like a milky translucent glass, or sometimes like solid. Well, it's not solid, but it's translucent because we want to let the light through. Okay, so we have this. It looks like a little upside down Smurf house, basically. That's exactly what it looks like. But most of these, some of these lamps have like a little finial at the end, which you can draw an oval, and then you could draw an oval and then have like a little tube coming out of it, and then having a little ball. It could have something fancy like that, or you could just keep it very, very basic and smooth. So let's get rid of that. So you could have it very, very basic and smooth. And then I'm just going to put like this little curvy reflection in here. Actually, the reflection should be from the window. Maybe we could put a little reflection from the window here on the lower left. There we go. So now it looks like glass. And maybe make the bottom of this just a little curvier so it looks more 3D. Make it a little curvier in the middle. There we go. All right, so now we have a light up there. Not the most attractive, but it's very, very basic because we have to light the room somehow. Now, if you have a light, then where's the control for the light? So you have to draw the control for the light. The control for the light, when you usually come into the door, most people look for a light switch right inside of the doorway. And it should be kind of in the middle of the height of the doorway where most people's hands could reach. So I'm going to just sketch in slightly with a little bit of space between the doorway and the light switch. I'm going to draw the little rectangle that's for the light switch, right? Because when you come into the doorway, you're going to have to turn on the light. So you got to think of these things because the drawing has to make sense. Also, the top of this lamp, I definitely think it should be rounder because it just kind of looks weird. So I definitely think that should be a little rounder on this side here. Yes, that looks a lot more 3D now. Make it a little thinner too. Doesn't have to be that like that. All right. Make the left look like the right. There we go. Now, I think I will add that little piece here. Nah, just keep it plain. I can't make up my mind. All right, so light switch. So for the top of the light switch, we are going to use vanishing point 1. And yes, you should use vanishing points when drawing everything. For the bottom of the light switch, use vanishing point 1 as well. Just pivot the ruler downward. Use a vertical line for the sides, like this and like this. Keep them parallel. And also, yes, you should draw a tiny little skinny line for the edge. So you may want to switch to another sharpened pencil. If you have a mechanical pencil, use your mechanical pencil. And that's a detail you can barely see because, you know what? Because it's such a small little pretty flat piece of plastic or metal. And just with your hands, just draw the lines tilting downward at the corner and tilting upward at the bottom corner. I'm talking about these angles here at the doorway. We're going to do the same kind of thing here to the side edge of the light switch. Also inside the light switch, draw a little smaller rectangle inside by using vertical lines. You could just hand draw them. Make the space on this side a little bit wider. And use vanishing point 2 lines for the bottom and the top. So you can do that. It's so small actually, even if you just did it by hand and guessed at the angle, it would look fine. Okay, so there's a light switch, and this is the easiest one to make. It's just a rectangle inside of a rectangle with just 2 lines in the middle. Like that's the kind of light switch that you would grab and just kind of slide up and down. It's too small to draw the side view of that little piece that's sticking out, so you don't have to do that, okay? And that's fine. You just draw a tiny thin double line in the middle of that smaller rectangle, and that's good. Everyone will know that exactly what that is, and that is a light switch on the wall. Okay, some people like to draw, you might want to draw a ceiling fan, but here we're just going with something a little bit basic for our purposes. If you want to draw something fancier, get out a magazine, or like a home magazine if you have anything of those. You know, your parents have those hanging around the house. Google chandeliers. You could Google anything. Google is great. Google lighting fixtures and put whatever dream lighting fixture you want in your bedroom. Who says you can't have a chandelier in your bedroom? Go for it. This is your dream room. You could do whatever you want in this dream room. So now we have a doorway, we have our floor, and the next thing is we're going to do the fun stuff. So we will put in a bed and a dresser perhaps, and we'll do like some big pieces of furniture. We won't be able to fit too many, so with our dresser we might be able to only fit a part of it into our picture before we kind of run out of space here. So that will be the next stage. We're going to put in the furniture. Then the 4th stage will be just room decor, like curtains. You should have curtains, right? For privacy. Maybe you put some vases on your dressers, things like that. Posters, pictures hanging on the wall. That's all that fun stuff that, we're going to save for the very last. Okay, we're going to pause it right there.